Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today on student tracking. It will be taking place roughly from 9 o'clock until 12 o'clock, and we have an exciting program lined up. So in terms of the program, I'll be doing a short little welcome. We'll then have a presentation by IDSC on the powerHEDA modules, which are appropriate for student tracking. And thanks very much to Glen and IDSC for agreeing to do the presentation. This will be followed by a short Q&A, and then we'll have some presentations from three institutions: University of Limpopo, University of Pretoria, and Plaatje University. And thereafter, we will have a bit of discussion. You're welcome to put your questions and queries into the chat. And then we can deal with them during the Q&A and the discussion period. For those who are wondering, yes, this will be recorded and it will be made available to everybody who's registered and placed on the Siyaphumelela website. So for those who are wondering who I am, my name's Ashton Maherry. I'm a program specialist at SAIDI, and I'm project manager for the Siyaphumelela initiative at SAIDI, as well as being the vice president for SA Air. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Siyaphumelela, the Siyaphumelela initiatives aims to collaboratively promote equity in South African higher education. And we aim to do this through establishing a more student-centered culture, achieving annual targets to improve retention, course success, and throughput rates for our degrees and diplomas, and eliminate differences based on race, gender, and socioeconomic status. We aim to improve the institutional capacity to collect and use student data for evidence-based decision-making. And this is really where efforts like this around the webinar is really important, to show how we're using student data and how we're doing student tracking. Fourthly, we aim to consolidate and share evidence-based student success efforts. So the purpose of this webinar as well is to try and consolidate what some of our institutions are doing around student success and share them through the platform of a webinar, as well as making the recordings available. We also aim to consolidate and share some good student success practices through our meetings that we have, our service workshops, and our annual Siyaphumelela conference. And I think most importantly, we aim to embed and center the student voice in all of our student success initiatives. So a little bit around Siyaphumelela 3.0. So Siyaphumelela as a student success initiative has been going since 2014. So we're now in our 11th year. The third phase of it is from June 2024 up until the 30th of June 2027. So we're still in the first year of our third phase. And the network itself includes 20 out of the 26 South African public universities. So for those of you who don't belong to the network, or your institution doesn't belong to the network, there are still ways in which you can be involved and stay up to date. We have our annual Siyaphumelela Student Success Conference, which is taking place from the 24th to the 27th of June, and that will be in Johannesburg. We have a whole lot of resources on our Siyaphumelela website. We also have our Siyaphumelela news alerts that goes out almost on a monthly basis with some articles as well as curated resources related to student success. For further information, you can email info@siyaphumelela.org.za. And as I said, this webinar recording will be made available to all of our registrants, as well as the presentations that have been made. And we'll upload the recording to YouTube. So the program for today, as I said, we're going to have a presentation by IDSC on some of the powerHEDA modules appropriate for student tracking, followed by a Q&A. I think we have 16 out of our 16 universities in the Siyaphumelela network are powerHEDA clients. So you might have some of these modules available that you're not aware of. So I think this will be a good opportunity for IDSC to share some of the work and the modules that are available for student tracking. And then, as I said, we'll have presentations by University of Limpopo, Plaatje University, and University of Pretoria. So that is the welcome and the introductions. Stanley, if I can hand it over to you. Sorry, Glenn.
Was just wondering. Thanks, Ashton, for for the introduction, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for your time. Yes, I'm Glenn. I will be taking you guys through some of our product suite, as Ashton has indicated. If it looks like I'm working from a pub, it's kind of true. That's my office these days. But enough of that. Let me share my screen so that I can start sharing with you some discussions on student-centered analytics and some of the opportunities and solutions we have as a company. Yes, Ashton, correct. We have a number of our clients who are already on board in terms of the Siyaphumelela project. What is going on here?
We can see your screen. Yes.
Thank you. It's asking me other sort of messages everywhere. That's good. Thank you. So, colleagues, what I'm going to be doing, this is a discussion. I'm going to be pulling together a number of areas which all kind of speak to each other when it comes to student-centered solutions. So I'm going to be using terminology a bit loosely. Apologies for that up front. But the reason why that is we do this differently. The kind of things that I'm going to be discussing with you is done very differently at different institutions for very good reasons. And there's no one size fits all when it comes to this kind of analytic maturity that we're trying to get towards, but also an operational and functional maturity about dealing with student issues. So what I'm going to do is split this up into three areas. I'm going to talk vaguely around the area of learner analytics and what we have in place to support that. Again, generic term, but our focus will come through when I show you some of the examples. You will see there's a particular element that has come through from the sector. So what I must say right up front is we are reactive to what the institutions are trying to do. We don't try and invent these things and then sell them. Everything is driven by the community and what they are trying to achieve. And that's what I will be talking about. So first of all, I'd like to just point out that I'm going to be talking about three areas, but basically four different apps or solutions or modules, if you, for want of a better word. In essence, we're going to be talking about the learner case management system. That is about interventions and doing the real tactical stuff at grassroots level in terms of learner management and learner progress management. We'll be talking about the LA Learner Analytics application and reporting. So there is already preset reports available in the LA app. That is underpinned by what I'm going to refer to as the LA warehouse, where a number of data modifications, enrichments, and manipulations are done on your transactional operational data in order to facilitate analytics. And then I'm going to be talking more specific about the student tracker, which is a rule-based solution which not only identifies but can also disseminate information to decision makers, etc. What's important to note that these are not independent of each other. They actually speak to each other, and we can actually set it up so that one gets notifications from another, or when we identify students of interest for any particular reason, and we have a number of 200 students, we can pass those automatically into the learner case management system as the first interaction of an intervention, which is just the identification. So there's room for movement, integrating these and using these together so that the use of the data and the information is optimized. Now, another important thing to note is we're going to be talking about flags and measures and calculated measures, etc. All of that information is available within the powerHEDA reporting environment, which is a role-based access portal to information. But you're not confined to that either. We also, and I'm going to make mention of it in more detail, particularly at the LCM, we make all of this information available in powerHEDA, but it is also available to Power BI or any other reporting solution, Tableau, MicroStrategy, whatever you may be using, via APIs or direct access to the data. We're not wed to a reporting solution, so whatever the institution is using can also be linked into this so that you can share and optimize your data as is needed. So let's just talk a little bit about the LA warehouse, the design principles, and why is this different from any other warehouse? Well, it's really just a point of comfort. So basically, it relies obviously on any operational data, any official operational data that might be needed for this. So this could be an LMS, it could be an ops warehouse, it could be a data store, it could be anything, or it should be a transactional ERP that we read information from. But in essence, what we do more than a traditional warehouse is we do a lot of transformations, aggregations, and calculations for different areas of interest. And that is all handled within the ETL process of then putting together both aggregated and detailed information into a specific LA warehouse. Another reason why we keep it separate from the others is this is normally a subset of your operational data. So typically, we only set up the warehouse for currently registered students. Those are the ones that are going to be seen from a progression and a success point of view. And those are the ones that are going to go into the LCM for interventions. So you do have the option of setting that you want a 2-year window of operational students, but typically it is the current year that that goes through this process. Again, that can be set up as the institution needs. It isn't an off-the-shelf solution that that gets implemented. So what is the purpose of the LA warehouse? What are the outputs? They can be a lot, but let's keep them simple. We have student qualification level, progression, risk measures, flags, etc. We have student qualification subject level. That's kind of the lowest level from a student point of view. But we can also do subjects. We can also do qualifications. We can do groups of qualifications as programs and look at metrics and measures that describe those areas appropriately. So to be honest, it can be anything that we want emanating from that warehouse, which is currently registered students, and everything we know about them. I'm not going to go into the LA app in a lot of detail. The LA app has a number of reporting components to it, and it typically is designed to cascade from aggregated information using particular filters and sequentially going down deeper and deeper into the information until we get a student dashboard, which has pretty much everything we know about that currently registered student. Biographically, we have transcripts, or we have their historical information on registrations, on passes, on course information. Just remember that may sound as a conflict of interest when I say that we have the entire history, but in the warehouse we only have currently registered students. Both of those are correct. Only currently registered students, but with all of their history. So from there, We are looking at highlighting issues of progression in particular, and you'll see that's going to be a focus from what I'm going to show you, and that's currently where our focus lies in terms of the information around students. So just having a look at what is available, the typical standard filters are obviously available in any of our reporting areas, but we can now start expanding on these to look at variations of repeater flags, at-risk flags, progression limiting qualifications. And basically what we do there is we build into the warehouse weightings, measures, metrics, and typically on-off flags in order for us to enhance the filtering capability. And there is an example of what could be down to the lowest level, a student dashboard. And what I'm just going to highlight here is there's a difference between looking at a student in a 12-month academic cycle, or even a 6-month semester cycle, rather than registered for a 4-year program. Let's look at them in their career at the institution. And that's what the LA app does. It recognizes that this student has registered for a 3-year program, and we know they're going to be here for at least 3 years if they don't stop out. Et cetera, et cetera. So it's looking at that from that perspective. And why do we do that? Is so that we can start looking at progression. When I talk about progression, it can be different things in different institutions, but typically it is the accumulation of credits over time, because we can monitor that in shorter time periods than annual and even semester. We can look at that in some cases in shorter periods. We look at the accumulation of credits relative to the career. So if we are a 4-year program and we are 480 credits that need to be accumulated, we know that the minimum time is 4 years, but we may allow them a maximum time of 6 years or 5 or whatever it is, up to the institution again. And then we peg that down as the agreement with the student. You say, okay, now that you've started your career, we're going to be able to engage and understand how you are progressing towards that end goal, to try and get you there as fast as possible. That's in the interest of the student, as we know, in terms of throughput, and it's also in the interest of the institution to get turnover of students going through. So the kind of things we will be calculating is the permitted time remaining. So that will be relative to your max year, or if your max has been set to minimum time, it will be relative to minimum time. And we calculate an expected time to complete. So in this example, this particular student, for whatever they've registered, has got 2 years left in terms of the expected time, but at their current accumulation rate, it's going to be longer than that. Therefore, red flag, let's put that back in the warehouse and bring that into the tracking system as being identified as possibly not going to complete on time. So we could call that at risk. I think we can just call it a progression flag of interest that we want to highlight this particular individual. And then we can do that on any of the measures and metrics that we have looking around this student and the compact that we have with that student over the time that they are there. Right, so the LA app is not used extensively. It is quite complex, and it does take a lot of getting used to and setting up, etc., because it's completely dependent on how the institution wants to handle the information at present. But to be honest, we really don't need the entire LA app to do some of what I've just mentioned. We can handle that in current reporting. We can extend the current warehouse just to contain those flags. So I'm suggesting we don't have to go the whole hog of putting in the separate warehouse and having the LA app there. We can do a lot of it in our current reporting. It's only advantageous if you really are getting down to very complex levels. A combination of analytics are a lot easier to separate it by design into its own warehouse and have the app over that. But again, all of it's integrated and all of that information available within the powerHEDA suite of modules. So just an example. So when I was referring earlier, we do a bunch of additional calculations and metrics and measures. And here are some examples of calculated measures: the average credits accumulated, the average credits enrolled, required student load, etc., etc. Now, again, you may say, yeah, but credits aren't always the most reliable way of doing things. Well, it doesn't matter if we're using NQF credits or HEMAS credits. HEMAS credits are quite reliable, I would assume, I'm hoping. So again, up to the institution in terms of what they would like to use. Right, colleagues, I think I'm going to go straight into the others and we can have questions at the end, but feel free to interrupt me if you really want me to hold on to something. So the student tracker is another separate module, and it's only separate because, not because of the data that it uses, but in terms of what it does. In other words, the function. So what is it? It's a rule-based identification tool which looks for areas of interest, anything of interest. It's traditionally, or a number of years ago, started off as being the identifying students at risk, but it's not. It can be top performers, it can be your low-hanging fruit in the middle, where the least amount of effort gives you the best gain or output. It's all of those. So whatever rules are required is what the tool will need to go forward. And that, again, colleagues, means that the institution must come up with this. There isn't, and I'm sure all of you are aware of having been doing this for a number of years now, there isn't just one way of addressing these or measuring it, and institutions would like to do it differently for very similar or even exactly the same outcomes. But typically, we are looking at students, qualifications, subjects. It may even go extend beyond the student area, but we may look at departments that are at risk, faculties that are at risk, but let's keep it at the detail level. And typically it's around students, qualifications or programs and the subjects that make up them in the curriculum. And we're looking for areas of interest of at-risk qualifications that are blocking graduation, etc., best or worst performing on a particular basis. That could be subject pass rates, that could be throughput, it doesn't matter what it is. Areas of impact that I mentioned before, what are the areas that are going to give us best impact for minimal or optimal input by the institution. The difference is being able to send information via email to decision makers. You do have the option of sending this to student. Most of our clients don't have that option because they already have a student communication mechanism. And what we do is provide information through to that, whether that be SMS, WhatsApp, or whatever it is. But that is available, but we typically don't do that other than sending information to decision makers for action. So in terms of what this means, again, we're relying on the Ops Warehouse, LMS, and the LO Warehouse if required. And again, we go through the process of designing a number of views, which is just a collection and an integration of different source data, and then identifying the different flags that are going to be used. And we then take those into the app in the form of, it's called risks in the app, but like I say, they're not specifically to risks only. And in the app, we will decide whether to report on that and send it and have that available in powerHEDA, or we can export to Excel, we can send emails, etc. So in here will lie the rules on what we want to do with the underlying data views that have been made available to the tracker. And basically, we also then have everything integrated into the dashboard and reporting environment. And like I said earlier, doesn't need to be constrained only to powerHEDA. That can go to any other reporting tool that the institution is using as well. So some caveats to having the solution working properly. What we have found in the sector is sometimes what the institution is trying to do doesn't always align with operating procedures and timing and schedules and cycles, etc. So obviously the data needs to be captured and made available within particular timing constraints. So we need to have a look at that when we are setting up the rules, and when we are doing the analysis and running the distributions. It's an important criteria to take into consideration. So what I'm saying here, and it's the third point as well, we need to then closely align this to whatever operating procedures are in place, whether it be for capturing of marks or validation of that, or distributing of information. And obviously there's always the data quality issue that needs to be implemented as well. And this can form just another aspect of that aligning to operating procedures that I've just mentioned. So all of those can kind of be seen in one, to say, let's bring together our standard operating procedures. Let's identify the source of the information. What are the appropriate cycles? When can it be made available? And then on that basis, that'll determine when the rules are run and when information is disseminated. So just again, this is an example of setting up detailed reports. This is in a cube viewer rather than a dashboard or other report, where we are looking at the number of subjects where no assessment marks have been entered, either a week before close off or by close off or after, or whatever it is. And we have the ability to drill all the way through to those subjects to see what's happening. And again, this can then be communicated to decision makers to say, we are running the rules in a particular time period, these things are missing. So again, this is not only dealing with the student aspect of it, but it's dealing with the institutional aspect, or even governance for that matter, can be entertained through that. Right, let's have a look at some examples of subject risk factors, which we have done quite a lot of in the sector. So again, our views contain a bunch of flags that we want to use, and preferably what we've seen is a combination of these goes a long way, rather than just using one particular flag. We're setting up a rule with a simple attributes and criteria. These can be set up as multiple individuals and then selectively combine those into what goes as an output. And something like a student headcount or size of the or enrollment attribute could be set up with particular ranges, and then carried a weighting depending on what you are trying to analyze from that. In this case, it's high enrollment subjects. Pass rate, very common one, bands for interest and apply a weighting. The repeater flag or the repeater count in this example gives another weighting. So what I'm suggesting is not only in terms of on, off, or yes, no flags, we can have these criteria identifying bands, and then we use the weightings or an ordering. We could also set up a situation where we rank a subject relative to all other subjects on a criteria. And it could be like we've seen here. It could be on a head count, it could be on a pass rate, and that becomes a different metric than just a standard weighting. It's a ranking, and can be used if necessary to identify your areas of interest. Then bringing those together, again, this is also just an SSRS report, but this could be done, and typically it's a lot easier to do these very detailed and filtered areas in SSRS rather than standard dashboards and filters there. But the point that I'm making here is having a combination of these calculated measures and their bands, and then being able to select, well, I'm interested in high risk only or intermediate, etc. So this can look at the end of the scale areas of interest, very high, very low, or the middle, which in many cases could be the high impact areas. It could be used like that. So again, an extension of that study period, pass rates, percentage of repeaters as opposed to the accounts. Again, it's expanding our calculated measures. It's expanding our logic on how we want to identify these areas of interest. All of these are available and used within that app. Student count and weightings passed, admission to exams. So again, you get to the point now where you may recognize 5 or 6 different pass rates, subject pass rates. Passes relative to initially enrolled, pass relative to those after the midpoint or the census period, etc., could all become extensions to your standard pass rate calculations that we do. Right, and all of those, and again, used within combination, is set up within the student tracker as rules, and then either disseminated, exported for action by any decision makers. And then in the app itself, we can then group these together to say, oh, we've got a bunch of module or subject level measures that we are interested in. We're going to create a bunch that are student focused. We could be qualification or combination of those. And in essence, you can create as many of those as you like in terms of using the model. And this is what the model would look like. And in here, what we are doing is saying we are recognizing a source of information. In this case, it's assessment marks, but it can be anything. We are giving it a description, and we're defining what the operator is and what the particular values are. So here you can see we can set up a rule just for pharmacy in healthcare, and a different one for another department or discipline, whatever it is in the area. And that is what is set up in the criteria section of the app. And then when we hit the notifications, that is where we schedule the distribution of those results. And the results are typically the results of this, not what we are seeing now, but 200 students who have met these criteria are disseminated via student name and number. Now, and again, we've got to take into consideration our POPI regulations when we do that. Again, it is governed by the institution on exactly how we do that. And I referred to the views earlier in the warehouse. So these are accessing the views. And why do we have views? Well, we don't want independent tables that we need to join here via very elaborate SQL queries. We really just want to access a particular source where all that magic has been done, and that is the purpose of the views. And for those of you who are using Power BI, you know, you go into Power BI and you set up the source of the information, or the data model as they call it. We've already done that for you. So if you're using Power BI, you just point your data model to the view and all the magic has already been done. The flags, and those are the measure types that I was referring to. So this just gives you some context to the terminology that I was using a little bit earlier on. Right, so colleagues, the student tracker in the bigger picture. So the learner case manager can be integrated with the tracker, and we can then incorporate data from the LCM into the tracker as rules. So in the LCM, which I'm going to discuss now, you will see we're going to be classifying students in terms of the interventions. And there's obviously a plethora of information there that we may want to bring into our identification, because while we are doing interventions, the interventions may have been student organized, but we may want an institution organized intervention as well. And we can see that those can be married. So it's not a case of only having information going from the tracker to the LCM, but the other way around as well. But in this case also makes sense. So we have in our tracker identified a number of students with a particular area of interest, and we want to choose to automatically create the initial intervention or log this student into the LCM automatically rather than doing those individually. That can also be done. Right, then looking at learner case management. So the learner case management is less analytic and more operational and transactional. And that is because here we are both managing and monitoring student intervention. So yes, there is an element of reporting within the app itself, but a lot more of the reporting is done via powerHEDA or any other reporting tool, using the warehouse where all of this information is integrated with additional data for your use. So the LCM is about sessions and interventions. And again, the terminology may be different within the institutions. And we have a metadata layer within the app which can call these things differently. But in essence, we have a session which identifies a student with a particular inquiry. And like I said, that may be from a student perspective. And we do have facilities at some of the institutions to do a quick capture or a quick population of those sessions. I'm not going to go into that into too much detail unless there are questions, but a session is the initial interaction between a student and an advisor or whoever is taking that on, and the interventions will arise out of that, and there may be a number of interventions in order to deal with the session that we've identified. I'm just going to have a look here. There is a question: is the student tracker installed at institutional level or at individual lecturers level? So basically what you have is the tracker is an app over your student data. Then we have roles and responsibilities that are set up to access that information. And that can be anything from a group. So you may have all your HODs as one group. Typically, we split them by faculty again because the rules are different, the dissemination is different. So we would set up a role for the Faculty of Engineering HOD to see this, that. So the whole point of access is handled within the powerHEDA environment. And we do that on purpose because we don't want to handle those complexities in the app. We'd rather have the app standard, and we'll handle the complexities of who sees what when within the powerHEDA environment. There's also a question, is UKZ a client? Yes, they are very definitely. Sorry, colleagues, just going through the chat there, so I hope I've answered those questions. Moving on then. So typically the LCM then is an interaction with whoever, and typically not the student, colleagues. So from here on in, it is somebody dealing with that student. Can be at different levels. So for instance, we do have at one of our clients, our smaller clients, even the deans and the HODs are doing some of these initial session setups, and we've set it up so they can do that rather quickly and easily without having to log in everywhere, but still maintaining the roles and responsibilities and the access to information. So there's quite a lot of work being done around that. But in essence, what we do here is an intervention will have a time and a date and an action, and that action will be done by a particular individual. And I will show you some screenshots now. When you log in as being a facilitator or doing something with a student, you are able to see again, based on your role, you will able to see a bunch of students, either those in the same faculty qualification or only your students that you are dealing with. You also have the ability to move an action or an intervention from one individual to another. All of that done via the roles that have been set up. So there's quite a fair amount of setup that happens here. And this particular app is also quite customizable, and we've gone a long way on all the drop downs, and the user interface that is required here is more setup driven than what it is app driven, which is quite nice. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that. So there's the welcome screen. So the LCM, this is one of our newer interfaces. So all of our products are systematically going through a revamp. This is one of the first ones that is already complete, and this is the new look and feel. of what the app looks like. And all of the authentication is still exactly the same. There's no impact to the client in terms of accessing this information. That's the user interface. So in this particular example, I've logged in as an admin, and because of my role, I can see a number or only one student or whatever it is. Like I say, that is dependent on my role in the institution. And then we will be able to see the sessions that have been in progress or completed, and the progression to completion is determined by the interventions that are underlying this. And really, it's a case of dragging and dropping from new to in progress to cancelled, rather than capturing dates and times. You just drag and drop to say, I've done this. You might have to capture a comment. Well, you will have to capture a comment. There will be, there's metadata required in terms of what was done, what is next, is this, has this been adequately resolved, etc. All of that happens in here. But there's a fair amount of automation in terms of this one being completed, because there were a whole bunch of underlying tasks that were dragged into the complete section to do that. There's a number of aspects where I can look at all the students that I'm entitled to, or just the current one that I'm using, etc. So there's quite a bit of interactivity in terms of what you can see when, all set up by the setup section of the app. Notifications are also there. That will really be a summary, and it's the first level of reporting within the app, where you can see how many are still in progress, how many have not been started, etc., etc. So a fair amount of analytics in that to support dealing with the students that you need to. So that's why we have things like My Sessions, which will only show those that I've just referred to earlier. And the summary stats can quickly identify the statuses, the different statuses that we have, and those that are open and closed and hidden, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, a low level of analytics, but all of this information again is available integrated in the powerHEDA environment. These are just filters. So again, the user interface allows more detailed access to information. And then the reporting, like I said, there are some elements of reporting within the app, but to be honest, that reporting is less analytical than it is functional. And it's really there for those who are dealing with students to see how many there are and where to go next, what is the more the higher priorities. But when it comes to the analytics of this and looking at these aggregated or disaggregated by faculty, department, discipline, etc., we go all the way back to our dashboard and slicing and dicing reporting in powerHEDA to do that. All of this information is made available there. So colleagues, just another note on advanced reporting. I have mentioned this already, but the exposure and the engagement with this information does not necessarily need to be confined to the powerHEDA reporting area. This information can be and is already being made available to other areas of reporting, depending on your analytic maturity status and what your users out there are used to and need to do, which is normally governed by some process and procedures within the institution. So again, a lot of information that is being made available. I must just harp on the fact that it isn't a default deployment and buy it off the shelf and off we go. Work is required, and work is required, and input is required from the client, from the institution, to say, this is how we want to do it. There are instances where we have come across where they've done it like this at this institution. We want to do the same. Yes, that can be done. But still, there needs to be engagement. There needs to be a facilitation of this process, because it isn't just a plug and play aspect for analytics. And that pretty much goes with all of our solutions, because they are not software packages, they are customized solutions. So Ashton and colleagues, thank you for your time. I'm going to leave it there for questions and for any further detail.
Great, Glenn. Thank you very, very much. There are some questions in the chat. I had one in particular around for Student Tracker. If you could elaborate a bit more on the learning management system information that is pulled into the views. And for example, any insights from institutions that have tried to integrate iEnabler with the LMS directly, as opposed to integrating it through the views. And then linked to that, sorry, any successes in getting lecturers to capture marks timeously for student tracking?
We good, but not that good. Thanks, Ashton. No, you've raised a couple of important issues. So the LMS, yes, we've had success with integrating LMS into the environment. Remember, the biggest headache here is the handshake, the technology handshake between the two environments. And to be quite honest, from where we're sitting, it's very simple. But third-party vendors see all of this differently. There are instances where we are not allowed access to anything other than summarized via third-party tool sets, and that's all we can do. When it comes to Adapt IT in particular that you're referring to, the iEnabler, again, they have particular rules and regulations about who can share their information. And it really is a case of negotiation, the value and the add of that. We all know that Adapt IT are really pushing the API agenda. So yes, that has been done where we can link via that. But now your timing issue becomes really, really important. So if you're wanting real-time information, it becomes problematic. And typically we are sitting at the end of those policies and data governance procedures. And if they don't allow direct access to production, which they typically don't, and if they only allow downloads at midnight, then that is what we are dealt with.
Thanks. And then around getting lecturers to capture the box.
Lovely weather we're having here in Pretoria. Yeah, thanks for that one, Ashton. I think that in fact, it is one of the reasons why more than one of our clients are monitoring what I like to refer to as institutional factors, because we put all the pressure on the students. You must pass, you must do this, you must accumulate this, but we don't go back and say, well, has the institution allowed them to register and change their curriculum in time? Have they got a double major on the same day in the exams? You know, all of that stuff. And part of that is actually the institution doing their job well as well. So we can measure that if the data is there. So if the rules are there, if the data is there, it can be measured and reported on. But I don't have the silver bullet, unfortunately.
Thanks. And then another question from the chat. For anybody who's attending now and might be interested in some of these modules, how would they go about kind of engaging with IDSC, especially if they are powerHEDA clients?
Yeah, that's a very important topic. So what happens is you will have areas of engagement with this type of information scattered right throughout the institution, but we're only dealing with, say, the HEMAS office or the management information or the BI area. So the real thing to do is, if you come across and you want more information, you can come to us directly. But I will be honest, we will be deploying and doing all the management through our powerHEDA administrator. That is normally 1 or 2 or 3 people in the institution. It doesn't matter where they sit, but typically they are in IT or they are in BI or management information or planning, depending on what it is. But we will always work through that administrator because we want to limit the number of administrators. Otherwise, it becomes an open field day as to who can change what. But that would be the best. If you hear of a good idea, contact me directly. Or anyone of the team directly, and then we will work through in conjunction and in parallel with those particular individuals to get it done.
Thanks, Glenn. And then a question as well was around the student tracker being installed at the institutional level, and how can individual lecturers access the information? So you haven't yet spoken about how individual lecturers can access and kind of what level of detail they see, which kind of linked to Ku's next comments around how is confidentiality managed, where it's sensitive data from student counseling, for example, in the learner case case management system.
Well, I think let's treat them all. I think it's appropriate all the way through. So thanks for that, Ashton. Yeah, I did make a comment when I saw the one of the chats come through. So in essence, the access to information and who can see what when does not impact how the apps work, how they are deployed, and how they are set up. That only impacts the powerHEDA environment, where we look at role-based access, and every individual who needs to have access to information within the HEDA system has a particular role. They could have 4. So for instance, I could be a dashboard administrator, but I could also be a student tracker capturer, for instance. Okay, so those roles are set up and maintained, and that is one of the very main reasons, most important reasons for the HEDA administrator, is to manage that. Because if we manage that, it's going to be a mess. It needs to be hands-on, it needs to be in the institution, and it needs to be real-time. If somebody needs access to information, they need to be set up. Now, in some institutions, that's quite a process. So you may have to fill in a form or go through a process of validation and to get that right. But in essence, all we are interested in is an individual linked to a function, linked to access to information. So you can have a situation where, I'm going to just call it a level 1 user goes into the system and can't see any detail. So the views that are made available and the data that's made available via that to that individual will only be aggregated. So even if they go into our slice and dice tool, which is the ability to drill all the way down, they will not be able to drill any further than what has been made available to them. So that is how we manage access to information, and that applies across all of these tools that we see. And to be honest, that is one of the strengths of the HEDA environment. So even when we make information available to other reporting tools, we got to take that into consideration. And that becomes quite a strong discussion as to what we make available, say, to Power BI as a reporting tool, rather than putting that constraint or that role within the Power BI area. It can already be done on the views and out. So we put a lot of effort and energy into maintaining the confidentiality and also the availability of information. I must just stress, though, that we fall in line with your criteria and your procedures, POPI components that you are adhering to. We don't have our own, because all of our solutions are so-called on-prem, and when I say on-prem, it can be cloud, it can be virtual, but it's not hosted in our environment, it's hosted in the client environment, and they have full control as to who sees what. Just a caveat to that, I hate Excel exports because of the vulnerabilities that go with it, but we do it. And again, it's managed on the basis of who can see what.
Great. Thank you very much, Glenn. I've just asked people if you do have any more questions, if you want to place them in the chat. I'm just seeing if there are any more coming through. It doesn't look like it, but I think this is a good opportunity now to transition to our next presentation, where they'll actually be showing how they've used powerHEDA for their student risk profiling. And this presentation is going to be from University of Limpopo, who are not a member of the Siyaphumelela network. So it's really good to actually see what are the other institutions in South Africa doing. And this presentation will be done by Dr. Alfred Mutanga. But thanks very much, Glenn. Please stay around in case people have further queries and questions.
Will do. Thank you for that, Ashton.
Yeah, thank you, Ashton, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to just for you to see my face, but I'm going to remove my video. My presentation, let me just share my screen. Thank you. I think one of the things that is that I'm going to share with the audience, which is very important, is that you're going to witness how we leverage the existing infrastructure as the University of Limpopo is a powerHEDA client for some years. So one of the things that happened in this project, the student risk profiling and student tracker at UL, was to leverage the existing technologies that were there, and to especially the data infrastructure and architecture that has been existing for quite some years. Then this project, also, you can see that it was important for us to make sure that we use business process mapping. What has been a problem in terms of academic development and academic advising. And there are key constituencies in the universities that I would want you to note. So the integrated effort that is being put in terms of making sure that students succeed at UL is very key. In terms of the risk project itself, student as risk project itself, there is some context that came in, essential for the university performance and also for the reputation of the university. Just for noting, there's been a committee from the higher education that some years back was saying that University of Limpopo was not profiling tracking students dropout and stopouts in systematic manner. Then the challenge that was there was that we needed to have an early identification of at-risk students and to be timely and effective and get effective support and provide that support in a timely and effective manner. Then, as I've mentioned, it was important for a decision to be made in terms of what technologies are we going to use in this project. We needed to have real-time tracking, we needed to profile the student at risk, and we needed to support the needs through data insights. And in this presentation, you'll find that what are the strategies that UL used in terms of using the powerHEDA ecosystem in terms of effectively supporting students at risk, and then how do we leverage the data insights. I know that there are, since all institutions are in the Siyaphumelela project, some of these points we are just sharing and creating a community of practice in one area which is very important to make sure that the students succeed in the universities in South Africa. The Student at Risk project, as it is members of the project come from institutional planning. They are responsible for the HEDA, the administration of the HEDA, as the Student Counseling Directorate, the Center for Academic Excellence responsible for academic development, the IT responsible for systems, because we needed to have these systems talking to each other, and all the work that IDSC is doing, they need to have access to the data. So IT is a prominent stakeholder in this whole project. Then which committee is very important? The the Senate Teaching and Learning Committee is very important, as well as a governance structure in the university. So it's very important that some of the issues that have been the participants in this webinar have been asking, you'll find some of those being responded to, or the way that the University of Limpopo is approaching to students at risk profiling. As what is important is very important to transform academic outcomes by identifying and supporting students at risk of failure in their studies. One of the key things was early warning system, early identification, to recognize students at risk early so that they can be prevented from declining and dropping out or even stopping out due to academic performances. The leveraging of integrated data, which is in the powerHEDA ecosystem, is very important, and to have personalized and timely student support is one of the key outcome of this project. And also, one of the key issues which is very important for academic development is twofold. It's academic development based on the learners or the students, academic development based on the lecturers themselves. So those interventions that are supposed to be done, especially by the Center for Academic Excellence, they should equip staff with actionable data to aid student-centered decision-making. And we should have measurable impact of these interventions by the improvement of retention and academic performance, and these are achieved through targeted interventions. So this project at University of Limpopo, it basically leverage some of the issues regarding to talking to governance issues, university policies, and this approach has been quite intuitive and proactive in terms of managing students at risk at the University of Limpopo. And the background of this is based on on a policy. So there are issues that are addressed in the policy because one of the key things that needed to be addressed was the timely existence of data, which was in respect to assessments, whether it was tests, whether exams, whether laboratories, all what is considered tests or assessments, whether formative or summative assessments, these needed to be available because the tracker or any tracking project, it is useless if there's no data. So how did the University of Limpopo achieve this? One was to review the assessment policy. Two was to develop a student at risk policy. So the policy is referred to basically targeting, in the first instance, undergraduate student academic performance monitoring and exclusions policy. The purpose of the policy is to monitor and manage academic performance for timely interventions, supporting student success and retention. And that scope of the policy, it applies to all undergraduate programs, offering a structured framework for academic performance categorization. What are the key classifications in terms of academic performance? The flags that Glenn was talking about, there is a green flag, which stands for good standing, orange flags at risk, and severely underperforming. That's what is identified in the policy. And one of the key things that has been identified was, how do we make sure that the lecturers input marks on time? One was to implement the lecturer's eye enabler. Two was to make sure that the policy talks to the capturing of the marks, the assessment policy. And also three, it was also how do the faculties get involved into the students at risk project. So the notifications that came from the tracker is part of the solution to how these lecturers, the director of the schools, the deans, the HODs get information regarding students at risk in the various subjects that are situated in their responsible departments or functional units. So the policy emphasizes regular reviews, ongoing monthly end of semester assessments, to update students' academic standing and also determine needed interventions. Early interventions are also emphasized in the policy in terms of standardized tests and performance tracking, which are used to identify students needing the extra support and early on. Supporting programs which include mentorship, counseling, workshops through the Center for Student Counseling and Development and the Center for Academic Excellence to strengthen academic skills. There's an appeals and reviews process because the students, they should take an active role in the whole process. So the students may appeal their classifications. You saw those green, those at risk, that's the orange one, those red, which are poor performance. They can appeal those with the Faculty and Central Appeals Committee for Fairness. So you could see that there is a governance structure, which is the Senate Appeals Committee. They have got the process where they can appeal for any categorization that they've been given. The policy implementation is basically being given oversight by the faculty exam commissions and HEDA data integration to ensure that there's consistent monitoring. You find that it is important, it was very important, it was very deliberate that because powerHEDA's reporting environment and other apps were already there at University of Limpopo, it was quite easy to use that data environment, that data ecosystem, and implement the student tracker. And one of the key things that I would want also to emphasize is that the student tracker is not only used for academic performance, it is used for annual results as well, where the students' annual result is shown, whether the student is going to be promoted and so forth. So there are various ways in which the flexibility of the tracker based on the rules, they are being capitalized. So all academic rules at University of Limpopo, they are inbuilt in the student tracker as another alternative to determine how students are performing at the University of Limpopo. Just to sidetrack a bit, but let me come back to student tracking and basically looking at the student tracking and how student outcomes are being monitored at the University of Limpopo. So one of the things that is important that I've spoken about is data integration. So the sources of data include academic performance data, and the Center for Student Counseling and Development, it's actually do what they call student skills, study skills habits, skills assessments, and demographic data. All these, they are coming from to be integrated at once. So we've got academic performance data, the study skills and habit scores. We've got some process in terms of making sure the quality of data is cleaned and it is precise, concise. All this data is integrated. Then at the end, we've got insights that are generated that can be attributed to contribute to the student support interventions. So we have got survey data, we have got academic data, which are in the systems, and taking advantage of the data ecosystem and architecture that Glen had showed you. We really use powerHEDA, and then we do testing for consistency, cross-validation, and then we have got accurate mapping. So this is very important because one would ask a question to say, how do we make sure that the study skills assessments that are outside even the operational system, in the case of University of Limpopo, the ITS integrator system, and even the powerHEDA environment doesn't have that opportunity to capture the study skills or survey data collected. So basically the survey data or study skills assessment data will be in Excels, and those Excels are curated, then uploaded using the powerHEDA Excel manager, which we upload that data into powerHEDA, then it becomes available in the powerHEDA environment. And one key field will be the student ID. Having that, then it can be integrated with any other data which is in the powerHEDA environment. That's how we achieve data integration and also capturing the data from study skills and habits survey questionnaire. So what constitutes the study skills and habits questionnaire? There are various questions that come from different domains. The skills in terms of writing skills, study aids and note taking, reading and selecting the main idea, motivation and attitude, test and exam strategies and anxiety, concentration and memory, organizing and processing information. I just made sure that people have got a certain idea about what the Center for Student Counseling and Development, what data they collect from students. And basically this survey is deployed to first year students, undergraduate students, in the first semester. As soon as they arrive at the University of Limpopo and they've settled, this study skills questionnaire is administered to them. It is not really administered to everyone, but it is administered to the first year's undergraduate, first time entering students, undergraduates. So in terms of students at risk categorization, there has been some transformation, the review of the policy, the good academic standing green, the strong performance indicators. These students will maintain 75% module pass rate, at risk students scoring before the required benchmarks, under 75% modules pass rate, requires support interventions, severely underperforming red, failing to meet progression requirements, requires intensive interventions and reevaluation. But the revised risk levels categorize students into 3 primary risk levels based on their academic performance, that is based on their scores in academic scores in a particular module. 62% to 100% is green, amber 50 to 59, and red 0 to 49. The shift in reviewing the policy was basically based on the fact that the first attempt was to look at the number of modules, how many modules the students have passed. But we needed to get into individual modules to see how students are performing, and these interventions that are going to be in place, they would also inform the pedagogical strategies in terms of teaching philosophies that would be attempted and that would be advised by the Center for Academic Excellence. So it was important to make sure that the categories enable faculties and support staff to tailor interventions to address each student's needs effectively. And how do we make the analysis, some of these data that comes out? There's descriptive analysis, summary of statistics on demographics, performance, survey results. They highlight key patterns. Some correlational analysis are being done. They explore links between study skills, habits, scores, and academic outcomes to refine support strategies, dashboards based on insights, real-time alerts, trained analysis, which inform timely interventions. One of the key things are feedback-based adjustments. So user feedback is integrated to ensure insights remain actionable and relevant. And dashboard and reporting, you could see that there's risk level visualization, real-time overview of students categorized by risk level on powerHEDA's dashboard. So you could look at a particular subject and look at the mark and the risk level that is being given by the orange, green, or red. Then there are filters and custom views of filters by faculty, academic year, department for targeted analysis, individualized student profiles, detailed student profiles, which include academic and survey data for personalized support. The reporting benefits, it provides immediate insight for the Center for Academic Excellence, the Center for Student Counseling Development, and faculties for data-driven decisions and targeted interventions. So you could see that this is one of the reports that we use, the powerHEDA reporting environment, leveraging what exists currently. And for individual students, we can bring in demographics such as gender, the qualification, then there is you can expand to see each individual student, how they perform, and how many subjects, for example, that were incomplete, subjects at high risk, a subject at low risk. So some of the things that I want to mention is that how do you control and see whether lecturers are entering marks? We have got a report that can be viewed by the HODs, that can be viewed by the director of schools, by the academic advisors in the Center for Academic Excellence, by the executive deans and faculties, where they show outstanding marks, outstanding results. And that report is based on faculties, and there's constant submissions to the exam commission, and there's some form of control based on policy, and there is a governance structure that is put in place in order to make sure that the tracker has got data always. And in terms of the report scope, you could see that we have got academic here, we've got academic blocks, we have got the faculties or departments, academic departments, we have got data collected, how many records have been collected, which is incomplete data, academic indicators that can be put as well, the grades can be put, risk categories are put, low risk, high risk, academically safe, the insights. The qualification-based breakdown shows risk levels across the qualification, enabling timely interventions that can be put in place. So in terms of intervention strategies, we have got counseling services that are being offered to high-risk students. They meet counselors and academic advisors. There's personalized guidance provided. We have academic workshops that which are time management sessions, study strategies and subject-specific tutoring, peer mentoring, because every time during the year, there will be some mentors that are designated to the students. At-risk students are paid with high-achieving mentors. Additional support and encouragement is given. Then intervention tracking as well. powerHEDA locks support interventions. It tracks intervention effectiveness as well. So these are key things that in terms of intervention strategies that are being put in place. And outcomes of powerHEDA interventions, we have got impact on retention rates. So early interventions have shown to improve retention rates to at-risk students. The faculty and staff empowerment, the accessible and comprehensive data help staff meet student needs effectively. Then academic outcomes, positive test and exam scores, pass rate trends observed among supported students, increased satisfaction due to personalized academic and counseling support that is being offered through this particular project. And the criteria for positive impact and measuring the effectiveness of the interventions, I could mention academic performance improvements, risk category transition, for example, from orange to green, from red to orange, or from red to green, progression in retention rates, these are being improved. Engagement and participation is also improved. Compliance and probation conditions, the fulfillment of reduced load, because some of the students, their loads are being advised to reduce the load, and also alternative qualifications. Some, they felt that they can move from one qualification to other based on a systematic assessment of the abilities of the students. This improve academic outcomes. We have got longitudinal outcomes where sustained academic success and higher graduation rates over time. Then qualitative indicators like positive feedback from students and faculties, on faculty and academic staff on intervention effectiveness. Of course, there are some challenges that we are experiencing in this project. Data quality and consistency, regular data audits, they are needed because we need to ensure reliability across the systems. Addressing challenges of data accuracy is very important. Then closely working with faculties, the Center for Student Counseling and Development, Center for Academic Excellence is very essential to refine the support processes that are given to students. Continuous improvement is very important. Adaptations made to the risk criteria, as you have seen that we changed or reviewed the risk criteria and categories when the policy has been reviewed, and interventions based on outcome of feedback. And what do we have in terms of future plans? The expanded data sources, some attendance data has not been taken into account. Data from the learning management system has not yet been integrated, though formative assessment marks and some of the online assessment marks, they come through from the learning management system, but there is some important information that can be drawn from the learning management system. And those analytics can be drawn, as Glen has mentioned, into the powerHEDA data architecture. Extracurricular engagement and also enhanced analytics to identify students likely to become at risk and enable proactive support. So ongoing monitoring and adaptation, continuously updating the risk criteria based on evolving data trends and intervention feedback. For your information, we are now in the process of integrating the learner case management app that Glen has mentioned to the World Student at Risk project, because the logging of interventions, sessions, and so forth has been basically dependent on spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets. Now we need it to be in the system and leveraging again the powerHEDA data architecture in order to have all these logged in a timely manner, proactive manner, intuitive manner, and also to assist the student as much as we can in order for them to succeed. Thank you. I know I've got a couple of number of questions, but colleagues, you could see that how the powerHEDA ecosystem supports student success by enabling a data-driven identification and timely support of these students at risk. The impact, you could see how student retention, academic outcomes, and to create an environment that is supportive of the students' academic well-being. And last but not least, I've got maybe questions on the chat, but I'm open for discussion. Thank you, Ashton. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, colleagues, for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Yes, there is a question in the chat. For the University of Limpopo Student Risk Project, how integrated is the student support structure with the program academics to enable the seamless identification, profiling, and support of the at-risk students? How easy is it to track such students at University of Limpopo? And I think the policy does talk about the integratedness of it. But yeah, how do you get the academics involved?
That's a very good question, and I think the policy talks about it. I've actually talked about and touched some of these things. One of the key things, colleagues, is very important to make sure that your governance structures, the Senate, up to the council, because the Senate actually, most of these academic decisions are made by Senate. So at University of Limpopo, the Teaching and Learning Committee, the Senate Teaching and Learning Committee, has made reviews and made policies, following policies. One is the assessment policy, which oblige academics to enter marks on certain dates in the academic year or in the semester. They are supposed to enter formative or assessment or continuous assessment marks. They are supposed to do that. And two, there is a report that is supposed to be submitted by the director of each school to the exam commission and to the Senate Teaching and Learning Committee regarding the issues we are talking about, the assessments that have been put in place. And powerHEDA there's a report on outstanding marks, outstanding results that are supposed to be submitted. So these outstanding results, they are talking to, linked to a lecturer, a subject, and who did not actually submit those marks and why. There should be reasons. And the director of the school is responsible to report that to the Senate Teaching and Learning Committee. Then there's the the student at risk project is based on a policy at the university. So this policy is actually has been promulgated and is being recognized through the Senate. So the Director for Center for Academic Excellence is an item on the agenda of the Senate that she should report on the student at risk projects. So they are twofold here. The Director for Center for Academic Excellence has to report about the status of the students at risk project, and also the director of the schools. So there's no way where we could see that the academics are avoiding to make sure that the data is available. And this is also one of the key things is that the University of Limpopo implemented an integrated performance management system, and the performance management contracts are very important at the university. And one of the key things is academic performance, the teaching and learning area for the staff member or academic or instructional research staff, which oblige them to abide by some of these policies that I've mentioned. So that's one of the key things that the University of Limpopo is doing.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's very encouraging to see the governance structures and the reporting processes taking place at University of Limpopo. I think a lot of our institutions can learn a lot from that. A question with regards to that survey was around how the model systems integrate survey data from external surveys. So you mentioned the first year survey. How did the model incorporate this data? So did it mean then that students were given their student number when they completed their survey in order to integrate it?
Yeah, that's correct. The student number is very important, because I even mentioned that one of the key field in the survey was the student number. And some of these, initially the surveys, there were some form of standardized surveys, and then the University of Limpopo customized it. And I think they further improved in terms of customizing some of those standardized psychometric or study-related surveys to suit the University of Limpopo's context. But one of the key fields in that survey is the student number. It allows the data to be integrated with other data sets which are in the powerHEDA data architecture.
Thanks very much. Yes, another comment around the submission of marks always being a problem, with lecturers always finding loopholes. But I think you've given a very good example with the powerHEDA report on the outstanding marks,
Yes.
how that identifies in real time the marks that are outstanding right early on in the semester, rather than waiting for the end of the semester to see if marks have been captured. Maybe just give a little bit around how that report is used in order to encourage lecturers to capture marks.
Yeah, that's very important, because I said that there are submissions that are constant submissions that are supposed to be made by the director for Center for Academic Excellence, and also the director of schools, including the deans. So one, what is available? There is a downloadable report, which has got filter in terms of academic year, the academic block, which is semester, when are you reporting? It is downloadable, the report, which is submitted based on by faculties, by departments, if it is possible. Then there is a dashboard. There's a dashboard that the DVC teaching and learning could actually present to, one, the Executive Committee of Senate, two, to the Exam Commission, because the DVC teaching and learning share the Exam Commission. So we've got what we call the Exam Commission dashboard, which has got all this information as well in aggregated or summarized form, which shows which faculties are lagging behind in terms of outstanding marks, outstanding assessments, which is available there. So each one sees exactly where they are. And last but not least, this whole thing is tied to performance agreements or contracts for academic staff, including the Center for Academic Excellence. So there's some way where the university is managing or governing this whole process, because they've actually seen that there were lacunas. The first attempt to implement the student at risk as I've mentioned, it was not successful. It ended up only looking at the annual results. Then the Center for Academic Excellence, the institutional planning, the whole university had to review this and make sure that there is such implementation in terms of changes of assessment policy, student and policy, and making sure that these are tied up to the performance contract of academic staff as well.
Thanks very much. I think linking it to the performance agreements is a huge advantage as a way of encouraging lecturers to capture their marks timeously. Just one more question around that dashboard. Does it drill down to individual lecturers, maybe individual modules rather, who may be lagging with submitting marks? So are you able to disaggregate in that dashboard to see where the problematic modules are?
Yeah, in the dashboard, we basically it drills down to the subjects, but not to the lecturers. But in the report, that the exam commission report, which is an SQL report, it drills down to the individual lecturers. So for each department, you can show exactly who did not actually submit.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. That was a wonderful presentation. There was lots of comments in the chat saying very well done to University of Limpopo. So really well done on that.
Thank you, Ashton. Thank you, colleagues. And I'm open to share, and with Glen and Ashton, we can actually share and make sure that we are in a community of practice. And I think we are going also to participate in the upcoming sessions that are lined up for Siyaphumelela. Thanks so much, and good luck, colleagues.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to our next presentation now, which will be from Plaatje University, and that will be done by Lerato. Lerato, if you wouldn't just mind, taking over. Thank you very much.
Good morning, colleagues. Ashton, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible and we can see you.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, colleagues, for the opportunity for us to morning. Ashton, I actually have a colleague of mine that I'm going to present with. Is Nimy. He's going to be my co-presenter this morning. So I just want to make sure that I've got it right. Okay, my screen share. There we go. I hope, can you see?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, so I'm just going to, I see my network is not stable, so I'm just going to switch off my camera so that I can save a bit on the bandwidth. Let me just see, where do I go now? Ashton, I just need to do this for me. There we go. Okay, thank you. So we'll be presenting student tracking at Plaatje University. I'll be co-presenting with Nimy. And I'm just going to do the first part of our presentation, which is to look at the support programs that we offer at Plaatje University and some of the guidelines and policies we have in terms of ethical use of student data. And then Eli will take on the second session, where he will be talking about the student tracking system and the different tools that we use to track the students. So student support at Plaatje University is divided into two. It's the academic support and the psychosocial support. The academic support resides in the Center for Teaching, Learning and Program Development, and the psychosocial support, it is within the Dean of Student at Plaatje University. So within the psychosocial support, we find the student life and student development. They're looking at mainly student leadership and career services, arts and culture. And their mainly is to make sure that our students feel a sense of belonging and get acquainted with the university procedures and structures. And then we have student health and wellness, and they do student counseling, and they offer healthcare services and nutrition programs. Then we have our campus housing and accommodation that looks at living and learning spaces, and they do accredit off-campus accommodation to make sure that it offers at least to the same standard to the living and learning spaces that are expected for students at Salt Lake University. But within the support structures, we have formal offices that will administer the services, but we understand that we need to get to the student level. Therefore, we have peer support levels that are offered by different students. We have success coaches that are already on campus now, preparing for their first year experience, that they will be guiding students around campus. We have peer mentors that are more closely to academics advising of students to make sure that students understand and they can acquaint themselves within the institution. Peer educators start a bit later in terms of supporting students at the residences to make sure that the learning spaces are adhered to, and as well as our sub-warden that assist with the supporting the residences. Then we also have the academic support. Our academic support, we've got the core curriculum module, which is taken by all first-year students. The module includes your at the beginning, when the students come in, we look at the factors that would assist students to transition into higher education smoothly. We'll look at expectations in higher education and how students should prepare for learning in higher education, especially now in the blended approaches, that students should adjust that some of the modules will be online, others they're supposed to be face-to-face. And we have integrated our academic orientation within that particular module. And we've got peer tutors and facilitators that assist students in that particular program. We've got academic advising, which I will show now as a center of our support at Salt Lake University. We've got peer academic advisors. We've got two approaches in our tutorial or tutorship program. We've got a module-specific one, where a lecturer or a faculty would decide on a specific module if it's at risk, and then they'll request support for that particular module. And then we've got an individualized support for students. Here is the students that identify themselves if they need support in a particular module, content, and then they can approach our office, and then we can link them up with a tutor. And then we've got academic writing support that is offered for both undergraduate and postgraduate students. They offer one-on-one workshops and writing workshops for bigger groups. They visit classes, assignment writing, proposal, as well as thesis writing. So because we follow the transactional model, what we have been trying to establish is to put academic advising at the center of all the support. And the information that we receive based on the student profile and the ITS information, the LMS information, we feed it into the academic advising information hub, where it can be processed and understood for academic advisors to understand where our students are at in terms of the different transition stages, or one would call them triggers, whether they're developmental stage and at what stage of developmental or situational stage at what stage they're at, what factors or facilitators or strengths do students bring with them. By understanding their profile, you can understand what they are good at and what might be possible inhibitors. And therefore, they can refer students to either psychosocial support or any of the student academic advice, academic support. which would then lead to an outcome. That would be the success in terms of how a student would define that particular success and what would be the reason or what type of intervention was provided. But again, feedback will go back again to feed into the academic advising information hub, where we will keep the information and advisors will then and will assist them to interpret the information, as my colleague will be now shortly explaining to you how we collect the information, how that information, it is used to make sure that we refer students to the correct interventions. And then we're really not as advanced as UL, and I'm pleased that I was in this discussion. I think I made a couple of notes. We currently have fewer policies that touch a bit on ethical use of student data. We are developing some guidelines in-house to make sure that the data is stored safely. Now, the policies on risk management, the university has started that twice a year. We need to do else you have, who have access to the information, what type of information are you collecting in that particular and be assessed in terms of the risk that it poses on the information that has been collected, and therefore advice can be provided and guidance on how to make sure that we reduce the impact. And then research policy, as well as ethics and code of conduct policy. They speak about informed consent. And all our students have to, before they complete any type of a survey, we need to receive informed consent. And for any research that is produced out of the data collected, it's governed by the Research Ethics Committee of Senate in the university. And then we've got policy on ICT security. Because of some of the softwares that we use, it becomes handy because it provides for protection of access to information, confidentiality, and make sure that the softwares that we use are aligned to the ICT security policy. And then we've got the ethics protocol in terms of data handling, that we have to also outline how we collect, store, access, as well as if we need to dispose of any information, we need to follow that particular protocol. So I'll be handing over to my colleague to go through the systems that we use, as well as the tools that I used. Ellie?
Good morning, colleagues. Am I audible?
Eli, are you able to?
I think I'll share from my side. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll be presenting the data-driven side of what we do, right? So in terms of tracking student for success, there's 4 sources of information that we rely on mainly. So we have the student academic performance that helps us get the assessment results, exam results, and also know completion rates of courses for students. And we have the student engagement, which is mainly fed from our learning management systems that allows us to know how students are engaging with our online platforms. And some of the indicators that we look at is the clicks, how often student clicks on a particular resource, and how long does the student spend, how much time does the student spend on the course on the LMS. And thirdly, we also have the student academic support, where we collect a lot of information on support consultations, mainly on the 3 support services that we provide, which is the tutorship, academic advising, and academic writing. And within that, we also have a at-risk student process, whereby a lecturer would identify a student that's at risk based on the survey that we conduct. and that student will be then sent to an advisor for counseling and further recommendations for certain interventions. And another key source of information that we rely on is our surveys and feedback. We conduct a lot of surveys to sort of understand and assess if the students are satisfied with the services that we are providing them and the perceived challenges that they have and how we can help them with the challenges. So this helps bring in that student voice in the support that we provide to students. And lastly, we also have the module evaluations, which we collect information on for quality assurance purposes. And this is mainly collected about twice a year. So there's two main sources or systems that feeds this into this data, that creates this data for us. So we have the ITS integrator system that we use, which is the student enabler system, which is also just the learner management system. So from that system, it helps us get student bibliography information, biography information, and also academic information about the student. And this helps feed the insights on enrollments, pass rates, and retentions of students. And our main source within this within SES student academic support here is the applications that we've developed that our staff use to collect information on the interactions that they have with students. And this information, again, feeds to the student needs and the challenges, and also helps us identify areas of improvement within the support that we provide to students. So this is one of the academic advising, this is one of the applications that we have developed for student academic support. So this is the student academic advising session form. So whenever a student interacts with an advisor, an advisor collects information. So there's two modes, since sometimes we have webinars and there's a lot of information to capture. So we have a different section where an advisor will just upload all the student numbers and would enter information about the session. So automatically we'll have the session date, we'll have the session method. What type of session was it? Was it an online session? Was it a face-to-face session? And the duration of the session. How long was the session with the student? And the session type. Was it an individual consultation? Was it a group consultation? Was it a webinar or class presentation? And one of the key, the student number here is actually a key thing that we collect, because it helps us integrate the different sources of information that makes the student tracking much easier. And on top of that, we also collect information on the topics discussed within the session, like what topic did the student or did the advisor discuss with the student, and if there's any session, and if there's any notes that the advisor took in the session. So that's the information that we collect around academic advising. And this is also the same for academic writing. The information is more or less the same. And also for tutorship support that's collected by tutors. And the reason why we program this, it just gives us full creative control over everything. And it also just makes it easier for us to integrate with some of the systems that we use. And the information that we collect from the student academic support applications feeds into the student academic support dashboard that we have, that provides analytical insights on academic advising, academic writing, and tutorship support. And with these dashboards, it allows us to view the data that we collect in a more granular level, whereby we can filter the consultation method, the type of the session it was, the qualifications, that if we want to see how, like, the problems that students in particular qualifications have, we can filter that. And we can also look at it by study level. And this is just a snapshot of how the dashboard looks. So the first image here is the academic advising tab that provides us with the period in which we've been collecting the data for, and also the number of sessions that we've had, and the number of students that we have reached in the sessions that we've had, and statistics on the consultation methods and the trends of how student consultations varies over time, and the common topics that the students consult us on. And we also get a summary on the type of notes that the advisors take. And this also applies with the academic writing, since the academic writing data and the advising data is more or less the same. It's the only difference is just in the topics in which the students consult on. And for tutorship support, whenever a tutor has a tutorial session, there's data that they collect. So they collect information on the students that attended the session, and that data is generally in a file, an Excel file that they upload in the applications that we created. And this just makes it easier for us to track students that are attending our tutorial sessions, and to also see if the tutors are actually having the tutorial sessions that they are having, and also to just see how the attendance of tutorial sessions vary over time. So here you could see the trend of tutorial sessions, and then we could also see this in different levels. We could see it in the faculty level, school level, module level, and so forth. And another interesting thing that we track is we track the number of modules that a student is attending tutorials for, and how many tutorials the student attended for a specified period that we drill down to. And we then also have our academic performance dashboard. So this helps us to be more proactive in terms of identifying at-risk modules. So what we do is during over the course of a semester, we track the assessment performance. So we check test performance. We do not just wait for the exam performance. We track the assessment performance over the time of the semester. And one thing that we have noticed is that lecturers sometimes do not submit the assessment results on time. So another thing that we also track is we track the submission rate, like the percentage of lecturers that submitted the assessments and the percentage of lecturers that have marked the assessments. This also just helps us send reminders that we need these assessment results as soon as possible. So these are the analysis. Also, we do it in 5 levels. We do it in the university level, faculty level, module level, and year of study level. So, and this insights, or this dashboard, it's a role-based dashboard in the sense that it's shared with faculty deans. And sometimes we do not want a faculty dean of maybe a particular school to see the results of another school. So it's role-based. So the moment a staff logs in to the dashboard, they'll only be able to access data of their faculty, or data that they are allowed to see in the dashboard. And on top of that, we also get results analysis on our exam performance and course completion rates. And another key thing that we get is the module evaluation, which comes from our evaluation surveys that we send out. So twice a year, there's an evaluation survey that students fill in for a particular module. That then feeds into this dashboard that the quality assurance office use to sort of monitor the quality of the modules and some of the problems that students are having with the modules. And another thing that we do is that we ensure that each lecture gets a detailed report of their modules to sort of understand the student needs and the perceived challenges that the students have on the modules, to identify areas of improvement. So in the student academic support dashboard, we're currently working on a student profile section that when a student consults with one of our advisors, we can just easily get a glimpse of the student information, what qualification the student is doing, and if the student has used any of our services. So here you could see this is a student profile of a particular student. The student number has been covered, and the qualification they studied, and then here we can easily see how many times the student used our services. So you could see here, this is the number of times the student used our services, 37 times. And that 37 times, if we have to look at it according to tutorials, advising, and writing, we would see that this particular student attended 31 tutorial classes, and they only attended 3 advising sessions and 3 academic writing sessions. And we can also get a detailed view of the sessions. What is it that the student consulted in the session? When did the student actually come for this particular session, which is then collected through our advisor, our SES data collection applications. And this also just gives us we can also just get an academic records of the particular student that we are looking into. And we can also see at glimpse if the student is having any enrollment issues, if the student canceled the previous module in the past, or they're in the process of canceling a particular module or deregistering for a module. And this profile section, we trying to have this session feed into our efforts of having a student success model, a model that we could use to identify at-risk students for early intervention, so that we can also provide personalized feedback on students based on the profiles that we have of the student. In terms of the tools that we use for student tracking, there's quite a number of tools that we use. We mainly use Shiny to develop our applications, and Shiny is essentially a web development framework that's available in two programming languages, mainly in two programming languages, R and Python. So we use this to develop some of our analytical dashboards and web applications. And we also use this tool to automate some of our reporting efforts. And in line with this tool, we also use Power BI, which is a business intelligence tool that we also use to develop our dashboards. And in terms of our data, a lot of the data that we have, we placed the data on a cloud platform, which is AWS. So this is a platform that we use to host our applications and also to safeguard our data. And there is a lot of encryption methods that you could incorporate here in this platform, because it's services that's given within the platform. And thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. There were some questions in the chat. One in particular, is it possible to capture group sessions in the student's academic support system?
Yes.
Is it easy? Maybe that's a better question. How easy is it?
At first, it was a bit difficult to capture group session, in the sense that we had to try to figure out how can we separate the students. But if there's a group session, what we do is we capture each student, and since students come for a group session, it means they come in to consult on a similar topic at a particular time. So that's something that helps us differentiate the students. So that's one thing that helps us with capturing.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's mainly just rounds of applause from the chat for a really excellent presentation. Really well done. If anybody else does have further questions, please can you put them in the chat? But yeah, I think it was a really comprehensive presentation. It's really excellent to see what Plaatje is doing. And maybe one question, what are the plans with it moving forward?
I'm not sure if Mr. Lerato wants to take that on.
Yeah, what are your next steps?
Ashton, I think our next steps is to move, as Eli indicated, we're trying to get where there's we can have all the factors that help us identify at risk. I think we've learned from UL to have those, flags to pop up. And I think we also want to get to a space where we can get to where the dashboards can be tailored for the different roles. We want to get to a point where students can also, get to see their profile and get to see what interventions they can use in order to increase their likelihood of succeeding or perhaps not falling into at-risk category. That's the direction that we want to take for this year. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that. That was a really, really insightful presentation. We're going to be moving on to our last presentation for today, which is from the University of Pretoria, and that will be presented by Dr. Kgadi Mathabathe and Bonza Majozi. And if you wouldn't mind, yes.
Hi,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yeah, so Bonza will present, and we can get started. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, sorry, I've got 100 screens here. I'm trying to get the right one.
No worries. So maybe
Um,
I can, in the meantime, just introduce
you
who we
go.
are. So I'm Kgadi Mathabathe, Director of Student Affairs at the University of Pretoria. Bonza is the Senior Systems and Analytics Administrator in the Department of Student Affairs. And we work with this particular work of student success, and not only just on the support end, but the analytics and supporting the academic advising and completion of degrees in minimum time for our students. So today we would like to share on specifically what we would like to call early success indicators, which we used to track the students if there needs to be interventions. And we want to specifically focus on these because we believe they influence the behaviors. They also influence the retention and how we see students just struggle it out and make sure that they complete their degrees at least in minimum time. Okay. I think we can move to the next slide. So yeah, so one of the, UP made a very, they were very intentional when they made the first strategic goal to enhance access and successful student learning, because that is the priority, and that's where the work that we're doing feeds in. And that kind of complements the goal of these early success indicators. So the goal here really is to proactively identify and address barriers to student success through a coordinated and systematic approach. We want to be proactive. We also want to make sure that even this then filters into our academic advising, which we would like to be largely what they call intrusive or proactive academic advising. And these early success indicators would help us to identify those students that we can track and support. So what is the how of this early success indicators? For us, it's important to effectively implement this. We need to understand the student journey, right? So we've had to map out, and there's still a work in progress where we need to map out the student journey across years of study. From first year, what does it look like? A second year, does it look like? A senior students who's about to graduate, what does this look like, even for postgrads? It's also important for us because we employ a collaborated approach across the institution, because we realize that the more and more we look into these early success indicators, it needs to be a multi-stakeholder approach. It needs to be collaborative across different disciplines, across different expertise and areas of knowledge. We align also support efforts to the needs that we identify, and we also leverage the data, institutional data, and that is very key and at the heart of the work that we do. We deploy responsive systems and tools. So it's very important that these systems and tools are responsive, but most importantly, they are user-friendly. And this also means that we need to act timely, because sometimes you can have data sitting there, but for us, it's important that it needs to be in real time, that we can see what is happening with our students. So these are just, it gives you an overview of those enablers then, right? That would influence the behavior that we would like to see in our students. And this is across, the very key processes, right? Process is very key. The technology, as I said, needs to be responsive. It needs to be something that is user-friendly. The users should not spend the time really trying to make themselves, it should actually be responsive to the user rather than the technology dictating how we work. And we're very clear and intentional about that. Policy, procedures, and strategy is also very important. We are backed, luckily, by policy. It's very clear in some of the teaching, in our teaching and learning policy, that student success needs to be something that we look at. Comprehensive information is also key. So, for example, we have academic success coaches who are known as academic advisors in some of the universities. And these are part of this strategy. They are part of this, this system that we are trying to build. We have student success managers, programs and project coordinators working with senior management. For example, we have our institutional student success committee and our institutional teaching and learning committees where we need to get this buy-in. And data ownership and custodians of data, it's very important to create these relationships and the buy-in. Otherwise, the system doesn't quite work if you don't have that. And system custodians. And also we need, it's very key that we have also people who are technical, also supporting and feeding into this system. So we have an opportunity. So as I said, we track the students. We'd like to track the students across the whole journey. So we know that students before they register, so we have different phases. It's pre-registration, after registration, and particularly now I'm looking at first years, right? And then we also have during the academic period until they graduate. But I feel like we still have an opportunity, and I'm not sure, excuse me, how many universities have ventured into the pre-registration phase, because in this area, this is where mostly these are students who have been given offers, they have been admitted, but they have not registered, and it might be because of multiple reasons why they're not able to, this does not necessarily realize into a firm registration or acceptance of an offer. And I think we have an opportunity here to track these students to understand, because even now we can see that there's a lot of students who've received positive acceptance from universities, but because of certain challenges like lack of money to pay for registration, or that first installment has then hampered already the student, which will now get the student coming into class late, and then that becomes now a domino effect in terms of how they perform. So we also, this is something that we'll be looking at in future, the pre-registration phase as well. Now, for first-time entering students, so as I said, the future plan is that we will do that. We will work with the Department of Enrollment and Student Admin, because they are the ones who largely work with this cohort of students, to start engaging with those students and identifying where the bottlenecks are, where the challenges are and the barriers are, because I think if all those barriers are resolved, then you would see them registered and now part of the university. And after registration, this is the kind of the group that we'll be talking about that we are currently tracking. So we have a number of mechanisms and measures in place. One of them is a University of Pretoria Readiness Survey. Every first year is expected to complete the survey, and this is where the journey begins for us. So, for example, the items that are on that survey can be grouped into personal, factors, and situational factors, as well as academic factors. So students will have to tell us whether they're first generation, are they going to also hold a part-time job while they're studying, what kind of support they're getting, if they have a disability to declare, with where they would need support, do they have accommodation, language of learning, what language they use, and with, just for us to gauge if they will be able to, integrate, especially with English being the language of instruction. So this is the first point of contact where we start to gather the data and help us to then start map out their journeys and the tracking, the plan. Other data points at this point also include, for example, a registration date, right? We know that late registered students also have to be followed, because already, as I said about the domino effect, we need to closely monitor them because they integrate a bit later than other students. There's so many other things that have just fallen by the wayside while they were still battling with the barriers that they experienced. We also look at the number of high-touch modules, and these are modules that have usually gateway modules, high enrollment rate. They are prerequisites to other modules. They can really hamper progression, but at the same time have been flagged to have very high failure rates. We look at the lecture and tutorial attendance, and we would hope, I mean, we've developed an attendance app that we would be, trying to, the whole change management and getting our staff to use it so that we can see that correlation between students attending tutorials and lectures and how that impacts the academic performance. We also have a learning management system. There's rich data there that we also leverage as well. Module registration, module access, and very interesting here, Bonza was saying that some lecturers already in the first week of January, the module is accessible, say, to a returning student. So there are students who actually already register and get in and get a head start of their peers in the module. To what extent does that play a role to their readiness for that year and their performance? Study guides access has also become an important thing because our study guides are online at the University of Pretoria. There's also students, we have data where we can see that this student actually took their time looking through the study guide. And I suspect this is also has an impact because if a student is well informed about what's ahead, this I think may influence their engagement in class and their preparedness. The visiting of venues, right? And mentorship as well. How we also this year want to pair every first year with a mentor, and we want to track that as well as the cases that are locked by the academic success coaches when students consult. Yeah, so, and I think another thing is we also have an opportunity. We give the students, the first year orientation students. So during orientation, it's not just the orientation week because that's information overload. We also have an online extended orientation module called UPO. So, and it has really helped us for the late register students who may have missed the first week of orientation to then go into the extended, which is about 7 weeks long. And we also collect data there in terms of access, how many first years have completed it, the engagement, the clicks, how many minutes they spent, the little assessments, and we also encourage them to complete it. And at the end, we get some data as well on terms of how they've evaluated the orientation, how ready they feel they are after having been exposed. And this is usually opened in that first week of orientation. And we also have, after that, so the one that looks at co-curricular content as well, where we look at mental health and all the other things. That is now the first year experience module that then kicks in after that UPO. And that is also a point where we also track engagement of students in relation to how that can positively impact performance and academic progression.
Yeah, if I can jump into the tracking part. So this is one of the senior management sort of dashboard that looks at the registrations. So this basically makes it easy to see how many students, for instance, we are approaching orientation and then it will be the end of registration, how many have registered, how many have not. So what Dr. Kgadi was talking about, that's the students that, for instance, should be coming back and they haven't registered. And we can already be able to track and say who are those based on the list that we have of how many qualified to return and who is already registered. Then this is just some of the examples of what we've mentioned already on what we're tracking. So this is particular for the first years. So we've got what we call success plans. where we create on our learner case management a list of tasks that a student must sort of do before the start of the academic year, typically during the orientation week, to access ClickUp, which is our learning management system, to collect the student card, to meet up with the academic success coach, which also there's a lot of opportunities for that during orientation, and also to set up their Google account, because it also allows, if the student wants the emails to be diverted to their private email, they can actually do that so that they don't miss the communication that is sent out from the LMS as well. Then this is the part on the study guide that we are sort of very excited about to actually look at this year. You can already see the students this year who have already opened their study guide. So it's very critical for us because we don't print them. So if you haven't accessed it, then you do not know what's going on in the module. So we tracking it, and if a student has not accessed all the study guides or the majority of it, we want to be already tracking in the first week of their studies. So the university already has programs that start early. For instance, our health sciences, and also I think the vets. So with those, we already have that data, and we can actually see how they're engaging. And the important part is we can see even their behaviors. For instance, this one reads the study guide online, but these ones, they most likely just go click and download it and view it or offline, which is both fine. We just need to know that you've accessed it. Then when it comes to the tracking of engagement, so we are looking at this in a program sort of approach, not on single modules. So if a student has a low engagement consistently across the modules, then we are able to flag that as a potential risk, because we are looking at the average minute of the student in the module, and we can be able to do that comparison. So it's not really based on a single module and then we flag. So it's basically on a program level. Now, from the two other presentations, the tracking of the assessments is a big one. So even on our side, we looking into this going into policy. I'm not sure, Dr. Kgadi, if it's already been approved already, or it's still serving in the Senate for Teaching and Learning, but that's basically one of the things, to basically have it on policy, and marks that appear. The assessments that are indicated on the study guide should be on the learning management system, but a lot of assessments are on the learning management system, and we are able to see what's going on. So what we want to do also is a relative measure to say, across all your assessments, what's the percentage of assessments that are below 50, right, or below 60? And we do that across all the modules that a student is actually enrolled in. And in that way, you can actually see if a student is consistently struggling in the program, or maybe it's a particular module that they're actually struggling with. In line with that is to basically track the submissions, whether the majority of the submissions are actually on time or late, right? So there is an overlap of course on what we're tracking between the first year students and also the seniors. So much of that will also be done for the returning students. But the key things that we are looking at is, even now during orientation, we want to be looking at, are they registering? If they're not, what are the kind of barriers are they having? And also, as indicated for the first years as well, the high touch modules, those are the ones that are known to slow the students from graduating on time. So we need to track those and especially for students that pick up high touch modules as an elective. So that is something that we can nudge the student away from, to say you shouldn't take a heavyweight module as an elective. Maybe go for others that actually complement your program. Then also is to look at the engagement data and the assessments, like I've said, and also attendance. So in terms of the attendance, we actually realized last year that there's a wide use of the attendance app now. So it's even used for consultations, for perusals, and even this orientation for 2025, we're going to be using it to get the engagement and also the feedback from the students on the support sessions that they actually attended during orientation. So that data also will actually feed into our tracking mechanism also, to know who benefited and who didn't attend what and is struggling with it now, so that we can know what to put pressure on our orientation for next year. So in terms of communication, that we want to be influencing the behaviors. So the emails have been working well, but we do know that the lecturers, most of the time, they do complain that the students do not read their emails. So this year we are bringing in WhatsApp as well. And the main thing on that one is just to consistently remind the students to have their most active number updated on PeopleSoft, so that we are able to push the communication. Sorry. So basically the nudges and also the notifications, if they've got an appointment, will also be pushed through WhatsApp in sort of in a one-way communication as we start, just to inform them. But as we go on, then we will actually be looking at how can the students just use WhatsApp to be able to book for appointments and to be able to chat also with available coaches or advisors. So on the side of the administrators, it basically looks like this. It's friendly. You can do your filter based on the program, faculty, and you can send a message to a group, or you can chat to a particular person. And these are basically managed based on the teams. So a team can be based on a department, or it could be a team of coaches or a team of administrators and so on. We'll end here. So that's basically what we are sort of working towards and actually to improve. But the goal is basically to understand all these key experiences and activities that makes up the journey of the student, and to be able to say what are the kind of things that the students struggle with and what can we bring in there proactively, so that we can try to minimize as much barriers as possible. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. We do have some questions in the chat. The first one being, how do you manage the readiness survey amid the orientation chaos that happens at the start of the year?
Shall I take that, Bonza?
Yeah.
Yes, that is definitely yours.
We'll say
Yeah.
orientation and NSFAS chaos.
Oh, yes, yes, it's true. Look, this year will be the first time when we administer the UP Readiness Survey a week before orientation, because in the past it would start only, they could only have access through the orientation online module. And this has really been a breakthrough for us, because then it helps us to manage that chaos for next week, which is when our orientation happens. In future, we are still working, and we still need to get collaboration with the Department of Enrollment, that when a student gets confirmation that they're registered, immediately they get a link to the UP Readiness Survey, and that data or their response in real time is flagged onto our systems, and we can already tell what needs and what barriers the students are experiencing. So yeah, if that is sufficient, I don't know if Bonza wants to talk on that one. Add something there.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
The orientation chaos. Yeah, the goal is basically to be as proactive as possible. So we have the students or registering, I mean, as early as the marks are out and they're able to register. And that's like sometimes 3 weeks before orientation. So we've got plenty of time to actually administer the survey there and to already provide early support and intervention. So the more we put things before the academic year, the better, because even the students do not have any academic commitments at that time. So they can do the admin, they can read their study guides, like that kind of preparation.
Yeah, and also,
Yeah.
just to also add that, for example, University of Pretoria has also arranged that now, for example, this whole full week, all the students that are in first year, they're in their residences for this whole week, which also takes out the challenge of those who don't have devices, because now they have computer labs in their residences, and then they can use this time to complete the survey. Okay, I think, shall I go to the next question, Ashton?
Yes, please.
All right, so the next question is the definition of high-touch modules. You want to say something on that, Bonza?
Yeah, so for us, we've got a very, I don't know how to call our definitions, but we're looking for the large modules. For instance, they've got an enrollment that's more than 500, and a pass rate that is below 75. And that is also sort of on the discretion of the deputy deans and the HODs, that other modules that are as important and they've got a concerning pass rate, even if they're below 500, they want to be flagged and treated as a high touch. But that's basically the rule of thumb, that if it's above 500 and the pass rate is below 75, then we want to flag that as a high touch, because there's a lot of students who are doing it. It's serving students across different faculties, so it really impacts progression. Yeah.
And maybe linked to that, do you work with the academics to help identify those modules? So it's not seen as punitive, but rather working together to support the students. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, it's part of the, what we call the module review project. So that project is run in our Teaching and Learning Center by John Claude and his team. So they look at those modules. They've been identified through the faculties, but it's more to say what interventions can we put in place? How do we support the teaching and learning? And also new this year, we have funding to also specifically through the Kresge funding, we'll be looking at then within those very those very modules, from a student support perspective, what can we equally do to support the students within those high touch, so that it's more of a holistic approach.
Excellent. I'm just checking the chat if there's been any more questions or any questions that we've missed. We do have a little bit of time if there's one or two more questions. Okay, it doesn't seem like it. So I want to say thank you very much for that presentation. Oh, yes, there's a question that's just come through now. Is a pre-semester checklist embedded in the learner management system?
I'm not too sure what is being referred to as a pre-semester checklist, but the pre-orientation, we have a pre-orientation module that's in the LMS, We have an extended orientation module that's also in the LMS, together with the post-module surveys. They complete that in the LMS. And it's good that we embed this in the LMS, because with the pre-orientation already, you are by default now already exposing the student into this environment in which they'll be working for the rest of their time at UP.
Yeah, is Bongi, I'm not sure if he's referring to the success plans. I'm not sure. It could be though.
Okay.
Yeah, those ones are not on the LMS. They're basically on the learner case management system, which the students can access and check. And when they're done, they can then tick off that I've done this and that. But we don't. Yeah, I think it's possibly that one.
Yeah, so I guess it's these acronyms. We have your learning management system, your simple Blackboard, but we also have your learner case management system. And that's where the checklist, the to-do list, that is from a support perspective.
But I think it's also the orientation being a module available on the LMS that students can access. Yes. Okay, thank you very much for that. We didn't have a tea break, so I'll try and wrap up and finish a little bit earlier. I just want to say thank you to everybody involved. Thank you very much to our presenters, Glen, Alfred, Lerato, Eli, Kgadi, and Bonza. We really appreciate the time and the efforts that has gone into preparing your presentations, and then, of course, attending today and sharing some of the practices from your institutions. Siyaphumelela is really a collaborative network, and it is about sharing and consolidating some of our practices. So thank you very much to everybody who shared, and thank you very much to all of our attendees as well, who have been very interactive. We've managed to keep the attendance above 100 throughout the whole webinar. So thank you very much to everybody for staying and attending. And as I said, we will be making the presentations as well as the recording available to everybody who attended, as well as placing it on YouTube and the Siyaphumelela website. And maybe just to say, for those of you, we do have some additional activities taking place in terms of the Siyaphumelela network, some of which are open to people for outside of the network. We have our mental health webinar, which is taking place on Thursday next week. And again, with that, we would have various institutions within the Siyaphumelela network presenting what are they doing around mental health in their institutions. We have the upcoming Dream Conference. I think it's too late now to register or attend if you don't have a visa. But yeah, we do have some additional capacity building workshops lined up around supplemental instruction. We also will be doing a teaching and learning, short learning program, which is intended for academics, and we'll be focusing on improving teaching pedagogy in the classrooms and the use of ICT. And just a reminder about the Siyaphumelela conference, which is taking place in June, the 24th to the 27th of June in Johannesburg. I have shared in the chat, and I will continue to share in my follow-up email how you can stay involved with Siyaphumelela in terms of signing up to our newsletter and accessing some of our platforms. But I think really, if you do want to hear more about this, please attend the conference. For the institutions that have presented today, this was just like a little tidbit of some of the work that you're doing. Please also consider offering a longer service workshop to the Siyaphumelela network, where you would be able to go into more detail around what it is that you're doing and sharing the practices involved. So I just want to say thank you once again to all of our speakers, and thank you to our attendees. And it's very encouraging to see the huge support and engagement around the issue of student tracking and the use of data for student success. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashton and everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Very
Bye.
insightful.
Thank
Bye.
you and
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
I'm tracking
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.